Hey, welcome back to the garage, everyone. Tonight we're going to continue rebuilding our brakes. First step will be to remove the brake rotor, the old brake rotor, from the hub. We're going to replace the brake rotors, the inner bearing, and the outer bearings. These brake rotors have a pronounced lip on the edge, and the thickness is, well, they're too thin to resurface. And the bearings are 35 years old, so we might as well change those out too. We've got some big hex heads or Allen screws to take off in there, so let's get busy with that. I wonder, I'm dumbfounded. There you go. How easy with that. I judge this against my experience with replacing the rear wheel bearings on my W126 Mercedes station wagon. I probably need to make a video on that. Let's just say it's difficult. All right, let's move on. Brake rotor. And this will go into the scrap metal bin at the local parts house. So here's our hub. So we'll need to get our grease seal out and our inner bearing. Okay. Aha! Bench vise. All right. I'm going to take this over to the vise and get that out of there. I'll be right back. It's not brain surgery. All right. So a little note about getting grease seals out of something. It depends upon the size of the seal that you're trying to remove. So you've got two choices here on your grease seal removal tool. You want to use the side that gives you the best leverage against the inside bearing. You don't want your leverage to be against the other side of the grease seal. Otherwise, you're working against yourself. So in this particular case, I use this more curved side, and I was able to put pressure against the inside bearing race, and then you work around like that, right, to get the seal out. So there you are. And there's our inner bearing. We're just going to set that aside. Next step is removing the inner and outer bearing race. Okay, we're just going to do this the old-fashioned way. Now, we're going to take the outer race off first, so we're going to flip it around, and you can see there's a little lip down in the hole right there. We're going to take a blunt end punch and catch that little lip, and we'll go from side to side and punch that bearing race out of there, but I've got to lift this up to give our bearing race room to come out. Let me get a couple of pieces of wood. All right, we've got ourselves some nice little wood platform to allow room for the bearing race to come out, and we're going to go to work. I don't know if you can see that or not, but let's see. It's just starting to come out. So this is going to take probably 5 or 10 minutes. There's our progress there. You can see the bearing race coming out. You know, I just thought about something. This is probably one of the few things that future car mechanics / electricians will have to worry about. With the internal combustion engine fading away in the 21st century, automotive maintenance will become a thing of the past or will be greatly diminished. And people will be able to spend their time on other things, which is kind of a shame, really, because I really enjoy this. All right, we're all done. That is the bearing race. All right, let's get the inner race out now. We'll just flip it over and do the same thing. All right, we're making progress. There we go. Hey, that one was actually fairly easy. All right, there's our inner race. What we need to do is clean this thing up really nice and get ready to press in the new bearing races. All right, we're going to continue on with installing the new bearings into our hub. We've got Timken, a set 3 for the outer and a set 5 for the inner. We will use the old bearing races to drive in the new bearing races. And we have a brand new container of grease You always want to use, in my opinion, you always want to use a new container of grease to do this job. You don't want to use an old container of grease, and I'll show you why. Would you want to pack your bearings with that? No, you probably wouldn't, because it's got all sorts of dust and debris in it. So you always want to use a new pack of grease. So, all right, enough of that. Let's get started here. The first thing we're going to do is go ahead and drive in the new bearing races. All right, let's move on. Let's go ahead and install our new race here. I'm going to keep things clean. Let's keep that in a little baggie until we're ready for it. Oh yeah, that looks nice right there. Now you want to go ahead and coat the inside of your hub here before you get started. And obviously the beveled side goes out. All right, you want to make sure it's nice and square before you start this. All right, the farther you get in, the easier it is. Getting it started is a little tricky, and quite frankly, it's a little awkward. If you had the bearing installation tool, it'd be easier. But I'm going to be honest with you. I've never really used a bearing installation tool. I was always kind of afraid of marring up the inside of the bearing race with one of those tools. I've always done it this way. I've done it on Chevys and Cadillacs and various other cars. I guess old habits die hard, really. We're almost there, folks. Got another 3/16 maybe, something like that. And you'll be able to hear there will be a difference in the tone when you touch bottom. So you'll know when it's there. All right. Calling that done, let's move on and put on the inner race. All right, we're going to flip over and do the inner race now. Go ahead and get some new grease installed in the cavity there. Make our life a little easier. And grab our new part here. Put our bearing back in the bag until we get ready to use it. Timken, USA. The originals are, let's see, that actually says SKF. It says SKF. There's nothing wrong with SKF parts. They make good bearing products. But this tells me that this inner bearing, either they used this from the factory or this was replaced at some point. Here's the outer bearing race, and it says Germany on it. So I suppose they could possibly have used two different brands when they assembled the car, but anyway, it doesn't really matter. All right, let's move on. All right, you'll note that the inner race sits down into the hub a little farther. I want to try to get it sitting squarely before you start pounding on it. Ah, that was nice. It felt like a mushy thud. Does that make sense? That means the bearing race was squarely inserted and you could feel it go downward. So that makes me feel good. Looking good so far. All right, so here's a little shot of what we have here, right? So you can see the bottom of the new race, all right? And you can see the bottom lip down there. And we have probably 3/8 to go, something like that. And you can see that the bottom of the race is wider than the top. So that makes the old race an excellent tool for inserting the new one. All right, that's it. We're done. We're seated. You really want to be particular about this process, right? You do not want this bearing race to be off center. Otherwise, the hub will just destroy itself within a mile of getting out of the driveway. All right, let's pack our bearings and drive in the new grease seal. All right, this is not rocket science. People claim you can do it all sorts of ways, but it doesn't really matter. As long as you take the grease and force it in this way, and it comes out here and here, or vice versa, it doesn't really matter. It just needs to get in there. You can just take your bearing, get a bunch of grease on it, right? And get it in your hand, and just start forcing that grease in and between all the bearings. So when I mash this in here, I can see the grease come out the top right there. And that tells me that the bearing is getting loaded. You've got to load it with grease. You can also mash it from the edges as well and watch it come out this side. The reliability of any system is always about the prep work. Your foundation is always the most important part of anything. It's the most important part of a house, a job, your marriage, if you decide to get married. All right, we got one bearing ready for a grease seal. Hey!
Are you doing a video?
Yeah, I'm doing a video. It's okay. Have fun.
No, that is not what I do. I remember roller skating in here.
Yeah, no, you can't roller skate in here.
No, I remember doing it like before you had those cars.
Yeah.
And I roller skated.
There's not enough room to roller skate now.
It was like, my mom did roller skate on this thing before, like.
All right, we're going to go ahead and install the grease seal. Get a little grease on the outside of the seal, make our life a little easier here. When you're putting a grease seal in, they're delicate, okay? You have to be careful. I'm just going to use a piece of wood and it'll be okay. Nice, wide, flat piece of wood. If it gets a little off kilter from one side or the other, just tap on one side or the other to get it square again. All right, so let me show you our progress here. We're done. The seal will poke up just a little above the outside edge of the hub. All right, you'll feel it bottom out as you're tapping. So once it's there and it doesn't go anymore, you're done. But it will not be flush. It will be poking up slightly. All right, let's go ahead and get the brake rotor on the hub next. You've got 10 holes in the hub. 5 are for holding the wheel on and 5 are for holding the brake rotor. So the holes for holding the brake rotor to the hub are the ones in the middle here, and the ones that are on near the outside are the ones for the wheel. So just so you know. Put a little glove over the bearing while we tighten our bolts down. I don't know what the torque settings are here, but I would imagine pretty snug will be just fine. All right, let's go ahead and get our outer bearing installed. And I packed some extra grease down inside the hub before I did that. So there's our locking retainer nut and our dust cap that we cleaned up earlier. All right, you want to hold on to your outer bearing, because when you do this it might pop out, so you got to be careful about that. Carefully. All right, we're going to go ahead and install our locking retainer nut. Now, the procedure for doing this is simply to tighten this while turning the brake rotor. And when this brake rotor starts to get difficult to turn, that's when you're going to stop and you're going to back this off 1/3 of a turn and then tighten it down. And then after that, you'll go ahead and jiggle the brake rotor vigorously. And if you don't have any play, you're done. You're good. We'll go ahead and use our crescent wrench here. That's a nice preload right there. All right, I've been playing around with this rotor here, making sure I can eyeball the play in it, at least get it the way I want it anyway. So the procedure in the Mercedes manual involves the use of a dial gauge. I don't have one, I'm not going to worry with it. Basically it says tighten your locking nut down until you see, the wheel start to drag, right? And it says back this off 1/3 of a turn. Well, if you back it off 1/3 of a turn, you're going to end up with too much end play. I got a significant, I heard a clunk anyway, so modified the procedure a little bit. I basically just cranked this rascal down until my rotor started to tighten up, and I backed it off a little bit to where I could turn it with my hand, and then I hand tightened it as tight as I could with my hand, right? And now my rotor spins nice and freely. There is no noise and there is no play. We are done. It's time for the dust cap and clean that mess off of the brake rotor. All right, I went ahead and got a generous dose of grease in the dust cap, and we'll tap this rascal on with our trusty rubber hammer. Time for some brake cleaner on that, and we'll move on. All right, let's get our brake rotors installed on the car. All right, let's get that tightened down. All right, let's go ahead and get our brake pads installed. Nothing a little rubber hammer can't handle. Okay, let's go ahead and get our brake pad retainer clips installed. The pins will go through there like that. You'll see in a minute. And then we'll run our pin through this side. There we go. Get our retainer clip installed. And we can do the other side now. It's a little tricky to get all this stuff lined up, I'll be honest with you. And our second retainer clip. Let's go ahead and get our brake wear sensor wires installed very simply. This little nub here fits into a hole in the brake disc, and these things slip down into these little grooves on the brake pads. Real simple. Very simple indeed. Okay, up next, brake fluid hose. All right, we'll get that tightened down. All right, I've got a 9/16 wrench here, and that'll do just fine. I don't know what the exact millimeter is, and I'm not going to hunt for it. All right, nice and snug. Let's get the other end connected up to the car. All right, again, nice and snug. Will do just fine. Last thing for this side of the car. All right, we'll go ahead and get the brake wear sensor cable installed. These are left and right, so you'll need to be careful which one, how you install it. You just need to make sure that this part is behind the rotor, behind the caliper, and you know you're doing it correctly. And the bolt comes in from behind. It's got a 10mm head on it. That doesn't need to be too tight. It's just plastic and brass, so just go real easy with it. Connect up your sensor wires. One last thing to do, feed this up through the hole in the fender well and connect it in the engine bay. All right, we're back over here on this side of the engine bay again with all the leaves. So this little connector right here is where our brake pad wear cable plugs in. They must have made this cable out of, I don't know, oatmeal. It's crap. Look at it. That side is dilapidated and the other side isn't. What the hell was that about? Anyway, so I got to take this connector off here, and the brake wear cable is open-ended, so I'll need to insert the ends into this connector. All right, so what I've done is I've taken the new cable and I have taped it to the old one, and I'll go up top and I'll pull the new one. I'll pull this through the firewall, and I'll pull the new cable in there with it. That way I can feed it through. All right, hey, you know what? That was actually pretty simple. Got the new one pulled up into the engine bay. I'm going to get this tape off here, and we're going to get this thing connected up and get this thing done. All right, if you want to do this right, you'll need to take this connector apart, okay? Your new cable comes with these ends on it like this, right? So you need to take this connector apart and feed those ends up through this connector so you can plug it into the car's wiring harness properly. All right, so with a small screwdriver, I was able to slip it into either side and take this little cover off. That was not hard. So next up, we'll pull these out and put this on the new cable. All right, that wasn't hard. Only thing left to do here now is get our little cover on there and then plug it in, then we'll be done. All right, this can only go on one way. It has a little plastic piece right here to guide you. All right, one last step to go. Well, all right, folks, we're going to call that a video. We are done with the brakes, hub, and bearings for the driver's side of our car here. Only one thing wrong. This whole brake job, and you'll see right up there, I was trying to get my brake wear cable snapped back into its regular position, and lo and behold, the old 35-year-old plastic broke, so I've got a tie wrap holding it up. So I may just leave it like that. Or I may look online somewhere, see if I can't find a replacement clip for it. But hey, it's not a big deal. All right, we're going to call this a video, folks. We've got the whole braking system done on the driver's side. I'm going to move on to the passenger side and finish it up too. And later on, we'll do a makeshift alignment to get us to the alignment shop, and then we'll take it in and get it nice and trued up, but that'll be another story. So for now, I appreciate you guys stopping by my channel. As always, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And if you'd like to be notified when a new video arrives, go ahead and click the little bell down below. Talk to you later.